All right, everybody's back. All right, great. Pleasure to be here. And I was asked here to come and share with you some of our experience, especially around KM. But we're not going to be talking about KM the way you've been, experiencing so far. We're going to be talking about digital experiences and how that ties into KM. So I'm bringing a lot of real-life experience, organizations like yours who have been trying to do digital transformation, trying to also, KM is a big part of that. And we learned a lot, over the past 12 years, and hoping to share some of those lessons learned, best practices with you guys. So I'll start by introducing our organization. So the company is called Rivet Logic Corporation. We are consulting, design, and systems integration firm. What we do in a nutshell is we build what's called digital experiences. So that's websites, mobile apps, even VR and AR solutions, and we do it using best-of-breed open source technology, right? So we are an open source company. I'm going to be introducing you guys today to an open source product that does this job of digital experience really well, and share some case studies with you as well. And we're going to have time for Q&A. I really encourage you to ask questions that are relevant to you so that you can take advantage of me being here, so hopefully it can help you with your current initiatives. The other thing I want to say is that digital experience is a broad topic. It's not just about KM. It's about pretty much any digital experience out there. And there are these digital experience platforms that are built today to address that need. I'm going to try to keep it, controlled and talk about KM as much as possible. But, feel free to also ask questions outside of the scope of KM if that would help you. We are headquartered out of Reston, Virginia, here, and we have offices around the nation. We also have a nearshore office in Costa Rica. We have also won several awards for our solutions, but I think more importantly, I want to share that our customers also won awards for those solutions that we built for them. And that's a lot more important for us than our own awards that our partners give us. And in terms of the breadth of what we deliver and the experience that I'm bringing here to you to share with you it's really across the entire spectrum of whatever a digital initiative looks like, right? So it starts with strategy. I walked in on the session you guys were having now. I heard a lot about strategy and how to come up with a KM strategy that works for your organization. But then also there's the implementation piece, right? So after you know what you need and you have designed it and gone through that process, you need to have the right set of tools to implement that, right? We're going to talk about that a little bit today as well. So I'm just going to skip the migration managed services. It's not really relevant today. And so as far as the way we approach those challenges from our clients, it's really by having a really good toolkit, right? Just like any practitioner has to have a really good toolkit, right? So we do a lot of research to pick and choose the right open source tools to address digital experience needs today, especially around knowledge management. We have a whole practice dedicated to that. And what I'm going to talk to you about is really how things have changed over the past several years around digital experience, right? So this slide, the purpose of this slide is not to boast or anything like that, right? It's just to show you that we have touched every market vertical out there. And even though all of these organizations and brands are unique, right, they have their own needs, there is this common denominator, right? There's certain best practices that apply to all of these organizations. And that's what I want to focus on today. So we're going to talk next about the digital landscape. So what does that really mean, right? The digital landscape is basically the digital world we live in today, right? So we're going to talk about how that has changed. You have all experienced it. So everything I'm going to say next, you're going to be nodding, I'm sure. You're going to say, yes, I've experienced this in my own personal life. But basically, over the past 10 years or so, we, as human beings, right, we have changed the way we interact with the world, right? We've become a lot more digital. Everybody has a smartphone today. Didn't used to be the case a few years ago, right? But now we have those devices. We use them for pretty much everything. And organizations and businesses understand that, and that's why they are also evolving and they're changing how they are doing business, right? They're becoming much more digital. You hear the term digital transformation a lot. Every one of your organizations is going through that in one flavor or another, right? So why has that happened? It's because we have become very accustomed to digital technology. You know, we are also much more open than we used to be. I don't know if some of you remember before Facebook, you know, we didn't have social media, or whatever we had was not like what social media is today. And then when Facebook was introduced, there was this resistance, right? Not everybody got on board. It was more of the younger generation, you know, that adopted this type of interaction digitally. And then today, fast forward, how long has it been? It hasn't been that long, just maybe like, you know, a couple of decades, let's say, maximum, right? And now everybody is using those tools. Everybody expects or uses social media and expects social media to be part of their lives, right? And now with VR and AR, virtual reality, augmented reality, it's going to be the new thing. Believe me when I say this, you're going to be walking into stores, you're going to be wearing those devices, you're going to have it at home for games, but it's also going to apply to the workplace. And we have customers already introducing that type of technology into the workplace, and we can talk about that during Q&A. So in a nutshell, the modern customer, and they're very demanding, and they have a lot of expectations, right? So with the millennials entering the workforce, those expectations are different, but they're also very complicated in the fact that they are always changing. So the gap between the commercial world and the workplace, or my personal life, I should say, and my workplace is closing, right? We're seeing the same types of digital interactions that are happening outside, happening inside of my workplace. There's more bring your own devices type of solutions. The intranets are evolving. Knowledge management solutions are evolving. And it's becoming very challenging for some organizations. Don't get me wrong. A lot of organizations are still left behind, and they're not able to keep up with this demand, right? So I use the term customer. And I just want to qualify that term a little bit by saying customer does not mean somebody who's buying something. A customer is basically whomever you care about, whomever your audience is, right, or are. And we can also call them consumers because they are consumers of content, right? So content comes in many different flavors. Your website has content. It's called web content, right? Your internal organization has documents. That's also content. And you also have press releases, articles, things like that, or corporate communication is also content. So the modern consumer of content is really spoiled. I mean, that's the best way I can describe it. They want instant gratification, right? They want and self-service, which means that they want to be able to find what they're looking for without asking for help, right? The tool has to be easy to use. You have to be able to go in, whether it be your intranet, your knowledge management system. They need to go in and find what they're looking for, right? That has been a challenge. I know a lot of companies have this problem today. That's the biggest complaint we hear, is that search is not working. I type something, and I don't find what I'm looking for, right? It's frustrating. 10 years ago, that problem was still there, but people found ways around it, right? They would pick up the phone, ask somebody, or figure out a way to hack the tool and, use the right keywords to find what they're looking for. But today, it's just simply not acceptable. So what they do is they just don't use the tool anymore. They do not adopt it, and you end up with a real big problem where you've invested millions of dollars putting something together for your workforce, and they're not using it, right? That's really bad. So instant gratification is real, and self-service is real. These are real needs from today's consumer of content. Also, personalization, right? So personalization is a whole big topic. I can talk about that for hours and hours and hours. But let's just focus on the parts of personalization that really matter. Personalization in the past and today, to some extent, is about the tool treating me like a user type, right? I'm a type of user. I'm a manager. I am an IT guy. I'm in marketing. Right? And it would personalize towards that user type. Today, personalization has evolved to be about the individual. So it's about you. So if you're in marketing, let's say, or you're in HR, your colleague is different from you within the same department, and you want to be able to personalize to the individual, right? Now, granted, that used to not be possible because technology was not there. You couldn't do that. There's no way for you to aggregate that kind of information and do something meaningful with it. But that's in the past. Today, tools have caught up, and it's really up to organizations to adopt those tools and use them the right way. The next one is engagement. So engagement is really about the fact that there's this expectation now that whatever your digital footprint is as an organization has to address web, mobile, social media, and that's just going to keep evolving over time, right? So let me give you a quick example. I will not use an airline that does not have a mobile app. I just won't do it. And I'm not the only one. Anybody who travels a lot will say the same thing, right? Because it's become an expectation that we have. So if there's a new airline that's coming out and they're trying to decide where they're going to invest their money, you can be guaranteed they're going to invest in building a native mobile app, 100%. So the reason that is the case is because consumers have changed. Their expectations have changed. And then the final point, and the most important point, which is going to become the future that we're all going to live through, is omnichannel experience. So let me explain what that means, because that's very important. An omnichannel experience is basically, it's known as the customer journey. You might hear that or read that term in articles today. And what it's about is that whatever your interaction with the digital footprint of an organization is, if you jump from one channel to another, like from web to mobile, you don't lose that transaction, right? It carries over with you, right? So I'll explain that with a use case here, this diagram. It's not easy to read, so I'm going to... It's also actually in the collateral you guys have, so you can look at that as well. But basically, this is an example of an omnichannel experience. You have this guy, right? And this guy downloaded the mobile app for his bank, right? And went in to look at, the mortgage, his mortgage, right? And then he saw a promotion for a line of credit. It's an ad, right? Looked at the ad, thought, that's interesting, but I'm not going to do anything about this right now, right? So then he goes home, goes onto his computer, logs in, to his bank's online portal, and then goes into the line of credit section and uses the calculator, calculates, looks at some numbers. Sounds interesting, and it ends right there, right? Today, in the past, when this happened, this is where the transaction would end, right? The bank knows nothing about this, right? Here's an opportunity for somebody to purchase a service, and it's a lost opportunity, right? So in an omnichannel experience, it goes beyond this, right? So now that this user did that, or this gentleman did that, a week later, he goes to the bank or drives by the bank. And what ends up happening is an ad shows up, or a notification shows up on his mobile device saying, hey, this branch has a promotion for line of credit. and here's the name of the gentleman you would ask for if you want to, if you're interested in that. This is very possible. It's happening today, and it's going to happen more and more often, right? So even beyond that, let's say the guy doesn't do this. He looks at the promotion, ignores it. Then he walks into the branch. As soon as he enters that branch, the person responsible for selling lines of credit would get a notification on his workstation saying, this gentleman just walked in here and he is interested in lines of credit. Go out there, introduce yourself to him, and see what you can do with that. So this is what the customer journey is. Now, this example doesn't apply to KM, or it's not easy for you to kind of connect the dots there, but it does apply to pretty much any experience you have. The point is that from device to device or from channel to channel, whatever information the system in the back has moves along with me, and then you can put rules in place to do something with that information. So I'm going to attempt to tie this to KM right now in front of you guys, and it's just one example. We talked about search, right? Search is a big pain point in the KM world. And what is the definition of search? Search is, by definition, me as a user. I'm looking for something, right? I go to the tool and I type a keyword and I try to find it. So this is search. That's great. This is, to me and to the rest of the world today, this is a bare minimum, of what you can do around search, right? If you don't have that, then there's a big problem, right? So you got to at least find based on the keyword. But today's tools go beyond that. They do something called, or allow for something called discovery of content. Discovery means that I'm not searching for this document, but the system knows something about me and knows something about my behavior. So it's telling me, hey, you might be interested in this document, right? I know you're searching for this, and based on what you're searching for, here's a document that maybe is what you're looking for. And in fact, the demo that I have for you guys does exactly that. So, and there's an AI machine learning behind it. So the technology is there. It allows you to do this. And then you're going to start seeing more and more of that happening in your organizations. And that's because everything that we are used to outside of work, the new employee of today expects those same things inside of the workplace, right? And there are real reasons for that. They're not just spoiled brats who, just want everything in the world, right? Because if that was the case, then organizations will not be spending 7 figures and sometimes, 8 figures trying to introduce those tools. The reason these tools are important and these features are important is because it affects your productivity directly, right? It affects the bottom line directly. If a user abandons a tool, if an employee abandons their intranet, for example, the intranet has so many features, right? From our experience when we did user acceptance testing and things like that in our UX practice, we found that employees are abandoning the entire intranet because they don't like the dashboard. The dashboard is just the homepage of the intranet. There's an ocean of knowledge, right, that can help them do their job, but they're not using it because they don't like the homepage. So the experience has become critically important now, right? And it cannot be ignored anymore. And that's why we have those digital transformation initiatives. Every organization that we worked with, that screenshot that had all of those companies, every single one of them is going through a digital transformation initiative right now, right? Some of them are more serious about it than others. Some of them care about their employees a lot more than others. However, none of them are saying, we don't need to do this. This is not important anymore. So they used to say that, right, a few years ago, but there's so much market research now, so much real life, people are quitting their jobs and joining another company just because of the environment and also the tools that this company is providing them. So what is the solution? So we talked about the problem. We talked about the expectations. What is the solution? The solution is called a digital experience platform, right? So today, you guys are, there are content management systems, there's document management systems, there's intranet solutions, there's all these different types of solutions that have existed for a while. Portals, right? Portal technology. All that stuff is good, but it's not solving the digital experience problem. It's not solving the omnichannel problem. And that's why we are now seeing these digital experience platforms. So I'm going to help define that for you a little bit so you understand what it is. But first, let's really understand what a digital experience is, right? So a digital experience is about how your audience, not just how they communicate and how they use the tool, and how they experience it and interact with it, but also how they feel about it. We didn't used to care about that. I'll tell you this, my own customers 10 years ago, I never saw that word feel in any proposal, in any RFP, in any requirements document. And today, we see it in every single document, in every single requirements document, right? So that is what a digital experience really is, if you think about what changed. So what would a great digital experience look like? It has to be consistent, right? So one of the examples I'm going to show you later is for a medical insurance company who is going through digital transformation. They are redesigning their website. They are redesigning their member portal. And what was very important to them is that they wanted to make sure that the brand is consistent across all of those digital assets, right? They're running on different technologies, okay? But there's a hard requirement saying it has to have the same brand, right? I don't want the user to go to my website, see a certain look and feel, and then log into the portal, and it's a completely different site. That actually does not sit well with consumers anymore. Right? They think that, this company is, not so great, right? I don't know. It just doesn't feel good. So it has to be consistent in terms of branding. It has to be personalized to the individual user, not to user type. And it has to trigger the right emotions. And what that means is that when you are interacting with the tool, whether it be your knowledge management tool, website, whatever, when you're interacting with the tool, there are different ways to go about putting a tool like that together in terms of the experience. Some people will say, I want to force everybody to do things one way. If you want to go to this type of document, there's only one way to do it. The other school of thought is, no, I have to provide other ways. There are many different ways to get to the same knowledge base, right? Is one of them better than the other? It's debatable. And that's why there is no one tool that can solve everything. You have to kind of customize the tool for the users, right? For your audience. So a digital experience platform that is powerful has to allow for that as well. If you do all of that, right? If you have the right attitude about this, you have the right executive buy-in to do this, then what are the points that you have to keep in mind to measure your success? Number one, very important, is it cannot be an IT-led initiative. That will fail, guaranteed, right? And that is how we do this. This is how a lot of organizations do this today. They go to the head of IT, say, I need an intranet, figure it out. Or I need a knowledge base, figure it out. So what do? They do the research, they pick some technologies, put a proposal, an RFP together, send it out, go through the process, pick a technology, implement the solution, and it fails. Why? It's because the people who are actually using it only get involved after the solution is built and ready to go. And they tell them, hey, come on over, do user acceptance testing, right? and then they come on over, they look at the tool, they say, oh my God, I can't even use this thing. I have seen this happen so many times. And the problem is, it's simple to solve, but it's not a technology problem. This is an organizational problem, right? You have to involve the end user, the people who are going to use this. You have to involve them from day one. So, you know, one of our clients, I just can't share their name. They are a very well-known company, and they went through the entire digital transformation initiative, and that was the number one rule: is that we have to involve the people who are going to use this tool when we are defining its requirements and when we are, you know, picking the technology, going through the RFP process. And I really can't stress that enough, because I am on the IT side of the world, right? I'm brought in, my organization is brought in to implement something. We typically, first thing we ask is, do you have a requirements document? Do you know what you want? Some companies say we don't know anything, so we go through strategy and all that stuff. But that's rare, actually. A lot of companies will come in already. They already did their homework. They already know what they want. And they give us the requirements. And that's when we realize that, you know, you need to make some organizational changes if you're going to be successful, right? And that's not something a company like Rivet Logic can help with. This is more an internal problem, right? And you have to have the right executives. You have to have the right leaders in place who understand that, the importance of that, and can incorporate that into everything that the organization does, right? So we talked about the digital experiences, right? And what makes a digital experience good versus great. Now let's talk about the platforms. The platforms are really the tools, right? So what is a digital experience platform? How is that different from a content management system? How is that different from the tools you guys have today in your organizations, right? So one of the very important features of such a platform is that it has to allow for integration, right? You're not going to rip and replace all the technology infrastructure that you have to bring a new platform in. It will never happen. It's an impractical pipe dream, right? A lot of companies, believe it or not, they will come in and say, hey, we have all of that, you know, and all you got to do is just throw everything away that you spent, you know, the past 20, 30 years putting together, and let's become more modern, right? It sounds good on paper, but it never gets the right executive buy-in. It's too expensive. It's too painful to do. A good digital experience platform allows you to phase these things over time. So you bring in that platform, it has to integrate well with whatever you have in place today. And it takes care of the experience part. And you can keep your current system, and just through integration, you know, bring all of that data, all of that knowledge to the surface. And a good platform has to also allow you to not just address your employees or your internal users, but you have to be able to address different types of users, like customers, vendors, thank you, partners, right? So we have one of our clients, they're an employee-owned company, and what they do is that they actually have a retirement plan for their employees. So whomever leaves the company after a certain number of years becomes a retiree. And they still get certain perks. One of those perks is that they continue to get access to the tools, right? The intranet, the knowledge base, but they're kind of in a different category now, right? They're not inside of the organization. They're sitting outside, hopefully sipping on a martini somewhere, right, enjoying life. But they want to keep track of what's going on with the company that they spent the last 40 years working at, and they can do that, right? But the tools have to allow you to do that because of security, because of all kinds of things that we are very familiar with. You have to be able to personalize and address external users as well, right? So a good platform will allow you to do that without you having to, you know, pull its guts out and customize it or fork it and turn it into something different. A good platform also comes with a lot out of the box, right? There are products out there that claim that we can do everything, but when you buy the product out of the box, it does nothing, right? So you have to hire somebody to implement the entire solution. That is okay, but I mean, it's not practical, right? It takes too long, and if you're building everything, then what's the point of having a platform, right? So the platform has to come with a lot of the basic foundational tools out of the box. So examples are, it has to support social interactions. It has to have a content management capability. It has to have a knowledge management capability. It has to allow you to build your own custom user interface and connect it, right? It has to be able to integrate, like I said earlier. It has to provide analytics so that you can measure success. It has to provide collaboration features like blogs, like commenting, like and don't like rating. These types of features, they have to be there out of the box, and then you can mold it into something that will become useful to you for your initiative. So that is why if you go out there and buy a SaaS-based product, you guys know what SaaS is? Software as a service, right? SaaS products will not work here, okay? And we are resellers of SaaS products, so I know those guys would not be too happy to hear me say this right now. But when we're talking about a digital experience that's going to be successful, it has to be customized. It has to be built for your audience, whomever they are. But like I said, you need something that is 80% out of the box doing what you need, and then you do that 20% customization to have a really successful solution in place. So the three primary features of a digital experience platform are content management, portal, and commerce. I'm not going to talk about commerce right now, but I just wanted to bring it up because it is relevant. Some organizations need to introduce payment functionality into their tools, and we have some clients who do that internally for their own internal employees. It's not like a papajohns.com or something like that, but the platform needs to support that. But basically, you know about CMSs, you know about portals, you know about e-commerce engines, right? The point here is that the digital experience platform combines all of that under one umbrella and then allows you to use bits and pieces of it as you need to. So what's the difference between a CMS and a digital experience platform? A CMS just manages content. I have my pages, just like a knowledge management system. I think a better question will be a regular knowledge management KM system versus a DXP, digital experience platform. What's the difference? The difference is that a knowledge management system does that job really well, but it has no way of pulling in data from a different system, right, that can help it do analytics differently or allow for more intuitive discovery of content and things like that. A digital experience management system has something called context, right? So this is a term that you're going to hear whenever you're looking at tools like that. Context is this customer journey thing that I was talking about, where you don't lose whatever the person did through their transaction. You don't lose that. It stays, it's persisted. Whenever they log in, the system is aware of that context and can, give you the experience that you want. So this slide is really more about, it's talking about a point I already made, which is you have to be prepared to make organizational changes if you're going to be successful in this space. And that's a difficult conversation to have always. But, and it's because sometimes it's out of your hands. You're not the person who can do this. But you are the person who can influence this potentially, right? You can say, well, there is real proof that this is important. And the way we've been successful doing this is that we definitely define champions within the organization. But then we would also use a project as the excuse to make those organizational changes. And that's when it becomes practical, right? You kind of do it piece by piece. You don't make a big organizational change. Larger organizations don't like change. Nobody likes change, in fact. But if you do it slowly, piece by piece, then over time, you can get to where you need to be. Let's say you do all of this. You're awesome, right? You've been able, or you work in an organization where from the top down, they understand all this stuff. They bring in the right tools. They go through the motions. They do it the right way, right? The next thing that needs to happen is that you have to know how to measure success. Measuring success is extremely important. And it's not because, for the logical reason, right, which I want to know how well I did, but it's also, there are tools that help with that, which are called analytics engines, right, that a good DXP will have. But the reason you have to put it in place early on is because whatever your needs are will change. We all know that. They have already changed. They've been changing constantly. And you need a way to constantly measure success. So define your KPIs, those very important key performance indicators, and always actually, make a point of reporting on them monthly, every quarter, whatever makes sense, right? But make sure that you're reporting on them. Because then and only then are you going to get some insights that will result in very interesting conversations, actually, and yes?
Can you share any information on that, like examples of that?
About KPIs? Yes, I have one that I'm going to share, and we can definitely talk more about it. It's a very important point, so happy to talk more about that, because it's unfortunately a lot of organizations forget to do that. Believe it or not, they spend millions of dollars, and then they have no idea if it worked. They just hope and pray. It's just unbelievable, right? That companies do that, but it's really because I attribute that failure, to be quite honest to you, to the folks who are doing the implementation. It is the responsible thing to do to bring this stuff up early on during planning, even if it is perceived as pushing the brakes on the project, but it's for a good reason, right? And people will come to see that later. So I really encourage you to bring KPIs up on every project, not just KM, right? Every single project needs to have that well defined. The other very important thing is that the reason we're doing all this is to enhance operations. That's really the main goal, right? We want people to be happy. We want employees to be productive. We want them to find, whatever your definition of that is, the end goal is productivity and smooth operations, right? Efficiencies, etc. So a digital experience platform and operations and their KPIs go hand in hand. They're very, very connected. And that's because there's something called the feedback loop. The feedback loop is very important, when you are doing enhancements, right? If you want to remain successful with your solution, there has to be a way, an avenue, a process for you to get feedback and put it back into the technology side of the solution, right? Now, some companies do this through surveys. They introduce surveys into the solution, right? So it will actually just ask you to fill out the survey. Some organizations will do a much more involved process where they will actually bring people into a meeting and do sessions with them, similar to this kind of setup we have here, to kind of hear what they think, and get that feedback, and then go through a well-defined process to introduce those enhancements into the solution, maybe the next phase or something like that, right?
I just have a question. So all
Sure.
of the language that you're using is about the business in relation to a customer, which makes sense. And this is a room of people that not many of whom are really customer focused, but it's much more internal team focused. And I think that's an accurate statement. Feel free to correct me. So I'm just wondering if we could reframe the language slightly so that we're talking about team members and, direct reports and higher ups as customers.
Yeah. And actually, I made that statement earlier. So that's exactly it. So when I say customer, I am talking about whomever your audience is, whomever you care about. So, and this is not just my term, right? This is actually the term that's used by the vast majority of IT organizations. They perceive themselves as service providers, right? And their customers are the employees, are the businesses, the different lines of business. So if we're talking about one department, and let's say you are putting together a tool for your colleagues within that department, then your customers are your manager, maybe the CEO, if you're HR, let's say you're HR, you're putting an intranet together. Then your customers are your employees, right? The different departments, the executive team, right? And you have to build it for them. If you are more of a, if you're like not, HR really deals with the entire employee base. But if you're maybe, let's say it's just a departmental thing, right? Where you are putting a tool in place for your department to be more efficient, then they are the customer. They are the consumer of content. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. But this is like, if I ever say customer, don't think about somebody buying something. It's not that. It is really whomever your audience is, okay? And that feedback loop that I'm talking about will come from whomever that audience is, right? So don't assume that they are happy with the tool just because they're not being vocal about it. You have to get that feedback from them and incorporate it into enhancements. So in summary, a digital experience platform is a single platform, right? It's not many tools that you connect together. It's a single platform that sits on top of your tools. So we're talking about knowledge management again. Your knowledge management tool, let's say today, it doesn't allow for any experience management, right? You can't make any changes to the front end. You can't change how search looks, not how it works. How it works is a back-end thing. Let's keep that the way it is, right? But how are people interacting with it? Does your tool allow that? So just a show of hands, how many of you have a knowledge management tool in place today? Nobody. All right. How many of you have an initiative where they are going through that, where you're trying to put a tool like that in place? Okay, great. So that's good. That means that this material is really very relevant to you because you're still in the early stage. You don't have something in place. So make sure that the experience piece is there. It's one of the requirements that you have, is that you have to have an understanding of how is your audience going to interact with that tool. Is it just about search, or is it more than just search? Is discovery an important thing? And the answer might be no, okay? So don't get me wrong. The answer might be no, but more often than not, the answer is becoming yes. So there is a change that's happening because the workforce is changing. So this is an example. Don't try to read into the diagram too much, but this is an example of what organizations have today. They're trying to implement all of these things, but they have fragmented systems. They have, and they try to integrate them with each other. They spend vast amounts of money on IT trying to create connectors and pulling data from here and pushing it there and trying to do all that and build custom thing here and a custom site there. bring in a new tool just because it sounds great and introduce it into this. And you end up just adding more and more to this mess, right? So you don't really get to where you need to be as far as experience goes when you do that. So what a digital experience platform allows you to do is that it sits right in the middle. So like I said, you're not ripping and replacing anything. This is just simply a value add, right? Where you're adding a platform that sits there. It has very generic connectors. It can basically connect to anything. Even if you have a system that does not have any integration capability, those platforms can still integrate with those. We've used these platforms to integrate with mainframe technology for claims management and things like that. So all that is very possible today. And then and only then can you really capitalize on the power of a digital experience platform, is to put it in a central location in your infrastructure. And the benefits that you get out of this are you don't have to worry about silos anymore. Silos are basically it's a big problem that all organizations have. Even we have the same problem, where we have content, documents that are sitting in multiple places at the same time. And there is no single source of truth for those documents. So when a document changes, some people are getting the new one, some people are still getting the old one, right? And if we're talking about an important document that you're using and in your work, and you're relying, and there are real consequences to not using the right document, you could, basically open Pandora's box there, and you can start running into legal issues. You can start running into real serious problems, right? So one of the benefits that you would get with the DXP is you will not have that problem anymore, because you have something that's sitting in the middle that is understanding that this document and that document are the same, and this one is newer than that one, so I'm only going to surface the new one. And I'm going to notify whomever is responsible for this set of documents, tell them, hey, you have a stale document, right? Maybe you shouldn't have two versions of the same document, right? Or two different versions of the same document. So it's a really good advantage. The other advantage is that because these platforms come typically out of the box with a workflow engine, then you can automate a lot of your processes. How does a piece of knowledge, whether it be an article, a document, even an image, enter your knowledge base? There has to be a process for it to go through to get there, right? So if you are replacing your out-of-the-box user interface of your KM system with something like this, like a DXP, and then the ingestion of content will come through that DXP system, then that system has to have a workflow capability so that you can go through that process to ingest content in. And then finally is that, really it boils down to productivity, right? So typically whenever we've deployed these types of solutions, productivity went up. People were able to find what they're looking for. But the amount of excitement that we see when people find things that are really important to them, even though they didn't search for them, is amazing, right? That's when you really, that you nailed it. You're very successful if you can introduce discovery of content into your KM solution. So let's ask this question. Is DXP right for you? Right? After all of this good stuff that I said, is it right for you? Is it right for your organization? If maybe you have small teams, maybe you're part of a small company, maybe it's a large company. The answer is it's not for everybody. And so the size of your organization matters, right? The size of your team, the amount of content that you have, the number of systems that you have in place matters. So if you just want a little tiny tool that does one thing, right, and you can do that with a file share, then why not, right? It costs nothing to do that. And if you're just a team of 2 or 3 people, it doesn't make sense for you to do this. This is overkill. But if you start to have multiple departments and you start to have a lot of employees, let's say, I would say the magic number is 50, right? If you have more than 50 employees in your organization, they're all going to have digital needs. They're all going to have KM needs. They're all going to have, just content consumption needs. And that is the time when you should really look seriously into putting something like this together. Because if you don't do it early, what's going to happen? The problem, you remember that other diagram with the messy one, right? That's what you're going to end up having. And the more messy and the more, big the amount of content is, the more difficult it's going to be to migrate over to something that is, easier to use and real DXP platform. So do it early because these platforms can grow with you over time. So we have clients who use it for their intranet, and they have been using it for the last 6 years. Sometimes also it's customer portals. We see that use case a lot. They use it for multiple years because it grows over time, right? You don't have to enable all of the features from day one. You can focus on what you need now, enable things as you go along, because the cost of these platforms doesn't change based on what you're using. It's the same. You get it all. You just don't have to use it all. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of use cases. Again, these are not necessarily about KM here for these use cases, but it is the same concept, right? The concept is we don't have tools in place. We're introducing new tools, and we are making sure that we are incorporating all of the digital experience best practices that we talked about, and then and only then can you reap the benefits of that. So Avnet is a medical insurance company in Miami, and they are a .NET shop. You guys know what that is? They're a Microsoft shop, right? So all they do is Microsoft, and they have the philosophy from day one that we will build everything ourselves. We're not going to buy anything. So they ended up building all of their tools, right? They built their portal, they built their backend systems, they built their website themselves, and over the course of 15 years, they ended up getting painted into a corner where they're not able to innovate, they're not able to make any changes to the site or their portal or anything like that. It would take them literally 3 months to move a button 2 pixels to the right, right? So that was a real problem for them, and that's why they went through this digital transformation process. So they introduced a DXP, and they used it in phases, right? So they redesigned their website, then they redesigned their portal, their member portal. And now they are consuming more and more solutions. Now KM is also getting incorporated. They're using it for their intranet, and then KM is getting introduced into the mix as well. Right. The next one is digital realty. Here, this is a telecom example. We're talking about a customer portal, but the reason I wanted to share this with you is because these guys built their portal in 2010, and they redesigned it, enhanced it over the past 6 years. But right in the middle somewhere, they decided they needed a native mobile app. They needed that for one of the features in the portal, right? So how many of you use mobile apps heavily? Just a show of hands, like use a lot of mobile apps. Okay. So you know that when you use a mobile app, it can't have too many features, right? You get lost in the features. It has to do one thing and do it really well, maybe a couple of things and do it really well. So a lot of companies will make the mistake of when they're trying to introduce a mobile app, they try to put everything that their current tool does into the mobile app, right? And that typically fails, right? So what you do is you figure out which feature or a couple of features does my audience need to use while they're on the go, right? When they're sitting in a conference room, do they need to just pull documents out to view them during the conference? Do they need to be able to get a slide deck and present it right from their tablet? These conveniences are what a good mobile app can address, right? So a good digital experience platform allows you to do that. The platform I'm going to introduce you guys to today allows for that. It has a native mobile app development SDK that allows you to introduce an app like that in just a couple of weeks instead of having a big project on your hands, right? The next one is LifeCare. LifeCare is a work-life management organization. So basically, they provide benefits to HR departments that they can share with their employees. They have 1,600 customers. We're talking about every company you ever heard of uses these guys. So yeah, the CIA uses it, FBI, Disney, GE, ADP, and 1,000 more companies use it. And what they do is they basically white label their solution for their clients, right? So the reason I selected this case study is because of white labeling. White labeling is basically when you build something once and then have the ability to create different renditions of that same thing with, some look and feel differences, enable features, disable some features. So let's say you build a knowledge management system for HR, and now you want to give it to marketing, right? And then you want to give it to IT. If you take the exact same thing and you put it there, it might not work that well. So a digital experience platform has to allow you to do white labeling, which means I can change it a little bit, maybe even drag and drop the dashboard, make it like more IT friendly, right? And then for marketing, it's more marketing friendly, etc. So the next one, and this is, I think, very relevant here, or I hope it is Smith & Nephew. Smith & Nephew is a billion-dollar company that nobody heard of. And it's because they build medical devices. Pretty much any knee replacement, the vast majority of knee replacements are made by them, and prosthetics. And one of the services that they provide to hospitals is a system that the OR nurses use to get trained on how to set up the trays in the OR. So they're using this tool as a learning management system, LMS. So LMSs are very important. It's a space where there has been very little innovation, really. Most, I don't know if you guys had to go through training when you joined your organizations and they told you, got to watch this video, and it asks you some questions, right? That's an LMS. Where is that coming from? There are a lot of tools out there, but they don't really work very well, right? And a lot of companies end up building their own, right? However, digital experience platforms today are now incorporating LMS features into them as well, right? So that you can add that into your solution and have video content. Video content is a new medium that is gaining a lot of traction, and it was not common before, not because it's not good, it's just because it was very difficult to deal with it. You take a video in a production environment, you take a video, it's enormous, right? You have to cut it up, you have to transcode it for mobile devices, you have to transcode it differently for the web. It's very process-oriented and it's very tedious. So technology is now caught up where all that stuff can be automated very easily. So you take that big video, toss it somewhere, upload it somewhere, and then everything else is automated. It shows up into your KM system, and it's searchable, and you can view it. And now, even beyond that, it's amazing the amount of analytics we can do on video now. You can know everything that the user did. You can know where they paused, which frames they looked at. Did they rewind? When did they rewind? Did they see it all the way through? And all these analytics can help you make your videos better. Because if you release a video and nobody watches it, that's bad, right? Especially if you want everybody to watch it. So the old way of doing it is that you force everybody to watch it. Like, you can't even continue to log in and get to where you need to go until you watch this video. And what people end up doing is that they just play, drag the bar all the way to the end, and say, I'm done, right? And now today, with the tools today, you can see who's doing that and who isn't. The next one is IEEE. So IEEE, they wanted to build an intranet, right? They have so much knowledge, so much information, and they want to share it across departments. But it had to be a tool where they can divide and conquer. They did not want to have one team that is creating all of that content for all of these people. They wanted to allow every department to be responsible for their own content, right? And they had to have a very easy and intuitive way to create, upload, go through workflow and approval at the departmental level, and then publish it out so that it can be consumed with roles and permissions and security, obviously, in a Google-like environment, right? So when you log into this intranet, you just get a search bar. That's it. And then as soon as you start typing, all kinds of things start to happen. It tries to figure out what you're looking for as you're typing, right? And it shows you drop-downs that says, you know, are you looking for this? And after you search, then it comes back and say, well, did you mean that? You know? And it was a very successful intranet because of that, because they put a lot of effort into search and how that's going to work. And don't assume that people know what are going to use good keywords when they're searching. Most people will not use good keywords when they're searching, right? So the platform I've been talking about all this time is called LifeRay, right? So LifeRay is a digital experience platform. It's an open source platform. They're a global company, and they basically have all of the features that I talked to you about today. They address the experience of everyone who's using the tool, not just the end consumer, right? But also the people who are managing the content, the people, the poor souls, you know, who are responsible for keeping content current, uploading the right document, getting it published at the right time, scheduling the publishing, knowing how to deal with errors. You know, if something is published and you want to pull it back, you want to revert, having the ability to do that. It addresses all of that. So we've been very successful with it. And because it is a company owned by engineers and founded by engineers, they also don't forget about the IT guys, the developers. So there's a lot of conveniences for IT as well. That's why IT is very excited about using this tool in more and more organizations. It's because of that, because they have a lot of very, very nice, easy tools to use. And today's developers are also very different from 10 years ago, right? Developers are very antsy about what technologies they use when they're writing code, right? So this platform doesn't care. You can write code in .NET, you can write it in Java, PHP, Groovy, whatever, you know. You can use any front-end framework you want, or you can use it out of the box too, right? So, and it comes, like, remember I said, out of the box, you've got to have a lot in a good DXP, right? And it has all of this. It's got, and there's a lot, you know, there's blogging, commenting, knowledge management, documents and media management, mobile device detection so that you can personalize based on the mobile device. So if I'm using an iPhone X versus an iPhone 6S, I get to see different things, for example. Very fine-grained permissions. Security is very, very important today. We all know that. The ability to integrate into your existing security infrastructure is a must-have, right? This tool integrates with pretty much all the standard single sign-on technologies out there. And it also has a lot of social features and so on, right? They are recognized by Gartner as one of the leaders in their space. And we have won several awards by building solutions on this platform, but also our customers have won awards as well, which is really a great testament. So I want to show you real quick. I know, are we? Yeah, so I'm going to just show you this real quick. I talked about Avnet already, but I want to show you some screenshots, right? So this is what their website looks like, right? And this is also from their website, tiles and stuff. And this is what the member portal looks like. So you will see it looks kind of the same, right? And I know some of you might think, so what? But that was so important, for their clients, for their customers, and for the same reasons that it would be important for your internal employees as well, right? They expect that brand consistency, easy to use, very interactive, and I just want to quickly go, and it's mobile friendly, right? So that's another must-have. People will be on their tablets, maybe not their mobile devices as much yet, right, in the workplace, but on their tablets. You're going to see a lot of execs sitting in a conference room. They don't have laptops. They have tablets, right? And they want to be able to use your tools that you are giving them. So it has to be mobile friendly. So here are some of the, I know somebody was asking a question about, KPIs and some analytics. So the tool allowed them to capture these KPIs. And that's what they cared about. They wanted to see visits. This is on their website, right? They wanted to see the number of visits. They wanted to see unique visitors, right? They also, and what they saw is that the number of visits went up, right? Number of unique visits also went up. But more importantly than anything else is that the call center volume went down, right? And that directly affects their bottom line, right? That KPI was very important because it used to be that people are using the tool, they get lost, they get confused, there's no way for them to figure out what they're trying to do, so they call, right? That's what we do. We call. I do it, you do it, everybody does that. So if you invest in the experience side of your solution and people don't have to call, that's a great measure of success, right? And it also kind of has a double advantage because if they're able to self-serve, then they also feel good. They feel happy. They're not frustrated. Right? I'm going to actually stop. You guys are going to have these slides. You're going to be able to look through these slides. But I wanted to see if you have any questions. So I'm just going to skip through this. So do you have any questions about anything I said so far? Yes.
How do we improve the organization in a way by using knowledge management concepts to gain, efficiencies, right? Optimizing the organization itself to achieve certain, outcomes strategically or tactically, whatever that may be. Can you describe your organization's experience with any other customers where the software, the product, right, the service that your company provides was able to address, kind of do business analytics for the purpose of improving internal operations, and just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So a good example that comes to mind, just so we can ground this with an example, is support, right? So we have several customers who have a support team, right, that let's say it's a call, like a help desk type of team, and they use the knowledge management system as their tool, right, so that they can address whatever calls they're getting. And I'm not talking about calls from customers, I'm talking about internal employees calling them, saying, how do I get to this document? I'm having trouble finding this article. My boss said, you got to read up on this. It's on our intranet. I'm not able to find it. So there's a group like that. They're responsible for dealing with these calls. And the folks who are managing this team, they needed insights into how well the tools are working to help this group of people address the need that they have, which is somebody's calling, explaining something that is not very well worded, right? And being able to get to the content that they need, the document that they need, the thing that they're looking for. So the way the tool helps with that is by providing something called hooks, right? So hooks are basically, it's a way for me to define, based on what that person who is on the phone is clicking, based on their clicks, where they're clicking, what they're searching for, recording all of that information, and what's the word? Doing analytics on it, and then finding out how long it took for them to find what they're looking for. So it's basically the round trip time of from the moment I started searching for something to the moment I found it, how long did that take? And they look at those reports every week, and they through that process, they found that the tool was actually returning incorrect results, right? When people were searching, when those employees were searching. So they changed the way search works, and they kept looking at the same analytics week after week, and they saw the shift towards more efficiency. I'm able to find what I'm looking for quickly, and that automatically resulted in them being more productive, right? So they're able to handle more calls and be more productive that way. And then after that, after they tackled that problem, they said, well, we don't want to even get the calls. So because they had the insights through analytics, the analytics engine on understanding that they have a problem when it comes to search, then they also started adding certain tooltips into the search user interface that the actual employees are using to search for things, to guide them through how to find things, put some tutorials in the right place in the intranet for them to find what they're looking for. And then the call volume went down. So, and that's how these guys measure success, is by call volume. So this is kind of an example of how I can use hooks to define what do I want to record. The tool set allows you to record anything, any interaction that's happening on the tool. But you can define what you want to record, and then use those analytics to introduce efficiencies into your operations. So. Any other questions? No. All right.
Thank you, Lana.
Thank you.